I'm very excited about the future of Africa. I'm very excited about the impact of the future of Africa on the rest of the world, including the United States of America.
So that is Vice President Kamala Harris. Just earlier today, she's been dispatched to Africa. She arrived in Ghana yesterday. She's going to a number of different nations to talk about everything from, they had a whole bunch of woke topics, and then also female empowerment, where there are some nations over there where you could legitimately have that discussion. But then also tech and economics. Very interesting timing on a number of fronts. Welcome back to the program. Dana Loesch here with you. We were talking a little bit about this because this comes as China is continuously making inroads in Africa through their Belt and Road Initiative. Now, they did have about a year ago a little bit of an economic disruption to where it stalled out some of their rail in different parts of Africa. And so there was a little bit of consternation from some of the some African officials because it seemed that China wasn't upholding their end of the agreement. China was dealing. They dropped by a couple of billions their spending on some of the infrastructure. But when, as Kamala Harris arrived in Ghana, she came in through an airport that was financed by CCP dollars, and she went to an event that all of the roads and the infrastructure and everything else were all financed by CCP dollars. And she's going to try to make the case that Promsies, we still like you. I don't know if that's too little or too late. It's all setting the stage if we don't change course, though, for something very bad. Joining us now, our very good friend, Stephen Yates, senior fellow, what am I saying fellow for? I have an accent. Senior fellow at America First Policy Institute, and he's the chair of the China Policy Initiative. Just to start this off, just to kind of, Stephen, to really get the right perspective on this. Everyone says that Russia has imperialistic tendencies. We've talked about this before. But really, the geopolitical opponent that does have actual imperialistic desires and is working to achieve them is China. I mean, they may not be trying to conquer through military, but they will try to do it through finance.
They sure will, and they've been practicing really hard in what used to be called the Global South, which is a lot of South Asia, South Africa, the whole subcontinent, not just the country, and in Latin America or South America, all those Souths. And so where we have our illustrious vice president going is area that has been well trodden by the corrupt machine known as the Chinese Communist Party. You're exactly right about some of these projects not living up to promises or expectations. They've even had athletic stadiums that start to crack and collapse from time to time because it turns out the Chinese are not known for quality control. And
Surprise.
So a lot of these things shouldn't be like sneaking up on people. The other thing that she's not talking about is the tremendous progress that was made on AIDS across the continent of Africa because that policy was launched during the evil Bush administration. And so we have these set of talking points, a lot about climate. Turns out South Africa, the country, is one of the great coal-burning countries of the world. I don't know that she'll come and lecture them. I'm coming to talk about maybe making some batteries for all the electric vehicles she imagines in the world. But really, her level of briefing was astonishing once again. I'm so excited about the future of Africa and the impact the future of Africa will have on us. The only thing she didn't note is the future comes in the future, and then it would have been complete.
I was just thinking, boy, if we played him some of these other sound bites, which I'm sure he heard, but he'd probably he'd get all mad. He'd get so mad over it. You made me think of something because I remember back during State of the Union, they had Bono there as the guest of Joe Biden. And we were wondering at the time, well, why to talk about AIDS in Africa? Well, that was a Bush initiative, and they just kind of glossed over the Bush aspect of it and sort of acted like, it was them. Well, that makes sense now because I guess they're trying to pretend to Africa, like, look at all the stuff we've done. But it seems a half-hearted defense of themselves because is that really enough? Do they really believe that that's enough to cause, all of these elected officials across the African continent to rethink their association with China?
Well, those leaders across Africa, God bless them, have probably been reading the news. And like a lot of Americans, they would look somewhat jealously on the filthy lucre poured into one country on the planet in the last year or two. And they'd say, well, all of these nickels you're offering to us don't add up to 1/10 of the stack you've put over there. And so here they have a whole continent of people. You'd think that a vice president that likes to tout having made history and connections with this part of the world would be bringing something that's substantive that might promote development over there. But you can't really do that if you're not willing to put the fat part of the bat on the ball when it comes to what China's doing. Because not only does China bring in corruption, they also bring in their own workers. And so what happens is they come in and they buy off the leadership class. They get some privileged access to a project. They build the project. Locals don't even get employed. The Chinese workers come in and do the jobs. And so all the way around, the African people get stiffed in this. And so it should be an easy sell. Even someone who speaks at a third grade level, like our vice president, should be able to talk about this and really be able to make some headway geopolitically. South Africa just conducted a military exercise with China. Why in the devil is South Africa conducting a military exercise with China?
And this comes on the heels of Vladimir Putin announcing that they're going to be working with Chinese currency, doing business with Chinese currency, the yuan, with also with Africa, South America, and Asia, basically gutting the petrodollar. That's incredibly significant on the heels of that.
Yes, well, I mean, it's all part of sanctions-proofing authoritarian governments. Now, I don't think we should be sort of flying off at the hip everywhere around the world. Unfortunately, there's a lot of disappointing governments in the world. But we should at least be taking note that this is real strategic competition. And what we're bringing to the table is a president that is actively engaged in exactly what today? And a vice president that's jet setting around an area that they have not even set as a priority for their administration. And if you look at the time that they spend talking about issues and the amount of money they spend, they seem to only really care about Europe, which shouldn't sell very well in Africa.
Yeah, it doesn't at all. Talking with Stephen Yates, Senior Fellow at America First Policy Institute. You can follow him on Twitter at YatesComs if he's not suppressed, and you can see him. The other, Honduras, their government has now officially openly embraced the one China policy. There's no strategic ambiguity there. The Guardian reported that they've cut diplomatic ties with Taiwan and that they have been now the 9th diplomatic ally that Taipei has lost to Beijing since they had a pro-independence president, obviously, take office in May of 2016. This from their foreign ministry comes as tensions rise. Surprise or not a surprise to you? And also, what a turnaround from the election meddling during Obama-Biden in Honduras to now.
Yeah, well, I remember in the Trump administration, there were officials that would actually call out the governments of our hemisphere and in the Pacific when they played in this game of go ahead and buy my loyalty, you lucky communists. Come on over here. And, here's a country, Honduras, that has had diplomatic relations with Taiwan for a long time. And there's really only one reason for the switch. It's more elite capture. They're not going to be better off as a country for having done this. They want some of those cracked stadiums from Africa built in their country, whatever. But it's not unexpected in the sense that the Chinese have won the word game. If you talk about one China as your policy, as our State Department and a lot of our government does, can you really blame other countries for following the bad example that you set in 1972? So we have to get our policy right. We should be leading in this hemisphere. We should be leading in the world on this. We should dare to tell the truth that the people in Taiwan are actually their own sovereigns. And if China wants to take that away from them, they can negotiate it, but they shouldn't be able to do it just by declaring some magical one China formula. But our leaders aren't prepared to stick up for them. And so I can't really blame those in Central America for falling in line, except I will because it's wrong. And I thought that there was supposed to be right and wrong in the world. I mean, people said that there's this war that's over good and evil. So this is evil winning, and we have to stop it.
Yes, I completely agree with you. Last question on TikTok. It's very rare, although, not all of Democrats, and there's some legitimate questions that I understand from the right, but I don't agree with them. At least they're coming at it from a purely, academic and intellectually curious, position. But most of Democrats and most of Republicans are kind of on the same page about TikTok. I always kind of, that my rankles are up whenever I hear people say, well, it's an independent business, so we shouldn't talk about banning businesses. But it is an agent of state. I mean, it was, and you've talked about this. There's not a single business in China that doesn't operate or without CCP oversight. I mean, it's just the way of it. CCP is, the not so silent partner in every business in China. I don't know why that's so hard to convey to people, especially some of these younger Democrats, because it is a state agent. That's where it does differ from Twitter or Facebook. To that point, do you think that they would actually agree on something? What would banning TikTok look like, and how would China react? I mean, I would just think they would take that very personally, which I don't care, but
Well, in a way, if they react personally, it's an admission that people were right in this.
True, exactly.
So they're kind of stuck in this particular debate. I basically see the Chinese Communist Party as something that's different, something that's evil, it's insidious. We have no obligation to engage it. We shouldn't be engaging it. There is a principle of reciprocity where we can't do things freely in their country, and so we should not be allowing them to do things freely in ours. But beyond that, there's tons of entrepreneurship and technological opportunity out there in the world. We don't need to have the CCP version of whatever silly videos you want to get addicted watching. But it's known that they use these platforms to manipulate people. We know that they use them against freedom movements. We know that they use them to try to break productivity, hypnotize, and otherwise disrupt our culture while they try to promote positives in their culture. And so if we know that they're playing these games, I'm okay with going ahead and saying, if you're going to do this as a platform and we have some questions about where you keep and use the data, then no, you don't get to play in our sandbox. And so I think we should just set the rules, apply the rules equally to everyone. But if you happen to be someone who takes some kind of amount of investment in a Chinese Communist Party related individual or organization, well, we're just going to take a pass for now.
Yeah, there you go. Stephen Yates, as always, at YatesComms, COMMS on Twitter. Always so good to have you. Thanks for breaking it down for us.
Thank you, Dana. Take care.